Well, hey there, friend. Welcome to this week's episode of the Jesus Girl Gang Kingdom Business Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Pyle, and I'm so excited that you're here today. Friend, we're going to be talking about the kingdom business movement. We're going to be talking about what it looks like and what it can be like to actually find the community and the room that you've been looking for to be able to build in the most efficient and really inspired way. And I wanted to talk a little bit, like, if it's okay with you, I wanted to kind of shoot from the hip today on today's podcast episode because, I don't know if you've listened to a few of the episodes before today's, but we did a lot of teaching in our first 21 episodes of the Kingdom Business Podcast. I did a lot of activation, a lot of teaching you frameworks and talking to you very practically about how to build and launch your kingdom business online. And I love that. But as I took a little bit of a hiatus off over the last couple of months, one thing that really occurred to me as I was thinking through how I show up here on this podcast, primarily, I'm going to be honest with you, primarily because I was noticing I had a podcast that I used to record and put out called the Position to Prosper podcast with Erica Pyle. And I was noticing that there are a good number of those episodes that still get downloaded every single week. Like I still get the reports of what's being downloaded. And even though I have not recorded an episode of that podcast it's been like 8 or 9 months now. Okay. I'm still getting reports of regular downloads every single week. And that's probably because those podcast episodes, I have them linked everywhere to like everything that I was doing over the last 5 or 6 years. It's really good information. And so there's a lot of places that people would find those links. I've got a lot of content out there. I refer to the content that's in that podcast. So it makes sense. But here's the other thing. This is the other thing that I realized. When I would record an episode of the Position to Prosper podcast, I did it from a place of, wait for it, because this is going to be the topic for today. I did it from a place always of conviction, personal conviction. When I would hit record or I would hit stream, I was always coming at the topic from a place of absolute belief, conviction to my core. And a lot of times that episode really was a preach. It wasn't a teach. I mean, if you know about anything about my background, you know that I am the co-lead pastor of a local church here in Tampa, Florida. And I preach a good amount of the time from that platform. And being a Bible preacher and teacher is something that's kind of core to who I am. And so this is how I communicate. I communicate all the time from this convicted place of like total belief and knowing that this is going to make all the difference. And yet, when I began to record the Kingdom Business podcast a few months ago, I took the approach that I wanted to be more in the teaching lane. Well, you know what? That might look good on paper for keywords and findability and SEO and maybe, the things that I don't know. I mean, we're all using AI these days. So maybe it might look good from like an AI analysis perspective because you're hitting the keywords and you're talking about the things that all the cool kids want to talk about in your niche. But can I tell you something that I learned, especially over these last 8 months or so, and not just in my business? Conviction is everything. What you believe to the core of your being, what you know to be true, and what you are convicted of will make all the difference in everything. And when it comes to my business, this is proven to be true over and over and over again. So honestly, this episode is going to be all about conviction. So who I want to talk to today are the ones who are, your ambitious Christian woman, your Jesus girl, godly girl, you're a Proverbs 31 woman, okay? And you're in the entrepreneur space. So you want to build a business online, or you've already got a business that you've built online and you're scaling it. But specifically, do you consider yourself to be a breaker, like a generational breaker? Like, you've had history with God where you've had words spoken to you and over you about your ability to step into things and absolutely break strongholds off of your life and therefore change the destiny of those who are going to come out of you and are going to go forward from you. Are you a breaker? I love Micah 2:13 for this, right? It talks about Jesus, the king, being the breaker. He goes before us, he opens the breach, and we can go along behind him. He's the big B breaker. Do you know that you're a little B breaker that's holding on to the hem of his robe? That's me. Let me ask you this. Are you a pioneer? Are you the type of girl who's like, you know what? Even if there's not a beaten path to that thing, if God has told me that that's where I'm supposed to go, I'm going. I can't say no because I know that the Lord is sending me and I'm made to be a pioneer. I'm made to go into that new territory, take the territory, right? Kill the giants. You got that spirit of Caleb on you. You're like, you know what? I know everybody else was too scared to go, but I'm not. So while we're all roaming around in this wilderness for 40 years, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and produce a family of giant killers. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to raise up my entire family to be able to kill giants because one day, God's going to give me my mountain in that promised land and I'm bringing my family in and we're going to clear the giants. That right there, that's a pioneering spirit right there. Love that. And let me ask you this. Are you a leader? Are you a natural leader type? You know that you've got to go first. You know that you've got to go in front. You know that you have to set the pattern. Because that's who I want to talk to today about to people who know that they have a call in their life to not only build a business, but to do it in a specific way. As someone who is a breaker, who wants to change the generation, who wants to shift the frequency, who wants to change the tone, and knows that they can do that because that's how they're made, and that they're willing to go out in front. They're willing to do it alone if they need to. And they may not love it, but they still know that they're capable of doing it and that they will go because there's a value in them, a very deep value in them to go and be obedient and do the thing that God has made them to do, and that you're the leader. Now, here's the thing. When you're a breaker, when you're a pioneer, and when you're a leader, God uses conviction to get you out in front. That's how he gets the ones, the spokesperson, right? The person who's going to get in front and is going to lead the charge. It's conviction. The best picture that I can see for this in the Bible is in Exodus when God comes to Moses in the burning bush, right? He's calling Moses out as a leader, as a breaker. He's going to be the one who sets his people free. And so he does this by like, what do we think about when we think about conviction? We think about the burning fire that's down on the inside of us, right? In the email that I sent out inviting people to come and listen to this podcast being recorded live today, I said, God told me to stop, and then he lit a fire under my butt. And I really feel like a lot of times this is where we have our come to Jesus moment as ambitious Christian women who are looking to build a business online. And we have this level of conviction in us, but there's something else that's going on that's holding us back. And so we start to spin, we start to spiral, we start to kind of be chaotic, we start to strategy switch, we start to freak out, basically. Let's just be honest. And God says, stop. And we're in the middle of this space and it's like we come to a stop, but then he reminds us of that conviction. Are you feeling me? But here's the thing, because this is where I want to start. There is a place where you can be this woman who's building this business and she's convicted to do so, but you can also feel something else. You can feel some kind of weight or stuckness at the same time. And I think that when we feel the weight and it competes with the conviction, it can tend to make us stuck if we don't know how to read the room, if we don't know how to read what's going on. And the reason why I know this is because this is who I was. So I've been building my business for over the last 10 years. And at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, so my story is a little bit interesting. I started out as an accountant and came out of college and was an accountant and worked for a big four accounting firm and was making my move up the ranks of this accounting firm. And while I was doing that, I had decided I was going to take on a little side gig, and I went into the entrepreneurial world and I started doing some direct selling. And I actually did well enough in my mid 20s with this entrepreneurial side gig that I had to make a decision. There was a moment that came that it was like, do you want to pour everything into this? And do you want to make this happen, this entrepreneurial side thing, as your full time thing? Or do you want to stick with your career choice? And I was doing okay. And if I made the decision to go all in on the entrepreneurial thing, I was in a good position. I could have replaced my income and kept on going. But for whatever reason, and I think quite frankly, it was the right answer at the time, I made the decision to stay in the corporate world. And so I continued moving up the ladder of the corporate world with this big four accounting firm. I got a transfer to New York City through the managerial development program. I was, being looked at as some of the top of the company to develop as manager level. And so I hit this rank, and they transferred me to New York City. I went to work at a very prestigious position. I got all this great stuff happening in my world, and I took on a mentor, or a mentor took me on, and he brought me through the next 4 years working with this big four accounting firm. And ultimately, he helped me to leave the accounting firm and actually go to work for one of my largest clients, one of our largest clients. And it was a Fortune 500, $2 billion publicly traded company based in New York City, had over 1,800 subsidiaries. And I came into their tax department, ultimately wound up being the senior director of global tax accounting for this massive conglomerate of a company, overseeing all of these subsidiaries through the tax function, helping with the tax reporting function. And I had over 50 direct reports internationally, both in New York and internationally. And I worked with process engineering mostly. I know that I told you that I was a tax director, but the reality was I came in at a time, it was 2004. So don't do any math. Okay. I'll just tell you, I'm 52. But at that time, there was a big kerfuffle going on in the industry with reporting. And there was a law called Sarbanes-Oxley that had come through, and there was concerns about our largest companies in America not having good reporting guardrails. And so there was concern about the efficacy, or the actual like goodness of the numbers that were being presented to shareholders and things like that in our reporting. And this wasn't just my company, this was all companies. And so a big thing back in 2004 was having people come in and help you to remediate or fix these weaknesses. And so a big part of that is having to go in and look and see, how does this company actually take in its numbers? How do we calculate things? How do we produce the reports that we put out and get certified by auditors so that our shareholders can know how to invest in this company, what the value of our stock is, all that kind of stuff. So that was what I was invested in as this senior global tax director of accounting in this company. And so my main job was actually to help derive good process, to see where the mistakes were, to understand what we needed to do to remediate them or fix them. And then I worked with a consulting company, an outside consulting company that came in to design process that actually fixed these problems. And then I traveled over the course of 3 years. I traveled to over 33 different countries all around the world, the farthest points of the world. I was traveling every 2 weeks or so. And I would teach the tax department, or the tax function, the tax person, accounting person of each subsidiary, how to implement the process that we created, how to follow it on a regular basis, and how to report up their numbers to our holding company, to New York. And then my team in New York would do the work to put that all together and produce the report that ultimately got certified and got put out to the public. Okay. So that was where I cut my teeth on process. That's where I cut my teeth on creating and implementing and helping others to implement process, testing it, improving it, making sure that it's all working well, and ultimately having it tested by an outside authority, an auditing company, so that we could know that we were doing a good job with our process. And the ultimate result would be that the stock price would go up, that our investors would be investing more, that we were seeing that our business was profitable. Even though the tax function isn't a profit center, the fact that we're producing good reports that people can rely on, that's a big deal. And so ultimately the fruit of that would be, is your stock price increasing? Are people having more confidence in your stock and in your business, and is it growing and things like that? And so I did that for a season, and then the Lord took me out of it. And that's a whole other story for another day. And I moved into the ministry space, and I moved into eventually the entrepreneurial space about 10, 11 years ago, when I became a certified holistic health coach. And I didn't want to just be doing health coaching as like just like coaching one-on-one. I really love the group model. I love coaching on a platform of one to many. And I just love the energy that's in a room and things like that. And so I became a certified holistic health coach. I got my certification. And one of the first things that God said to me was that he wanted me to look at a particular support product within my business, a particular, like a supplement support product. And and he showed me a direct marketing company to look at for that. And so I ultimately started my entrepreneurial journey in direct selling, in network marketing. And so I was this health coach, I had a product, and so I was teaching and coaching in group format, but I also had these products to offer. And so lo and behold, when you get into a system like that, you start gathering a team. And I did that. And so I was serving a bunch of families in this model, but I also had members of my team that were wanting to build a business as well. And right from the get go, I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed. And I think, it's interesting because most people that I talk to, most women that I talk to that come into my world that I ultimately wind up coaching, this is their story too. They come in, they feel that first initial conviction from God. They feel the calling. They feel convicted to build the thing that he's calling them to build. And then all of a sudden, something hits. And what I generally would say to people when they go, okay, like I got stuck, I got paralyzed, something happened. And I know that what that is the weight of the calling, but it's not that simple. Because I think that a lot of times people are like, oh, well, it was just a really weighty call. And so it caused me to stop and think. And then it took me out. Can I tell you something? I want to be really clear about something right now. Listen to me. If you're multitasking, I really want you to focus on me. The calling will never take you out if the calling is from God. Listen to that, because God is only going to do good things to you. Jeremiah 29:11, God says, I have good plans for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, right? So when we think about the call of God coming to our lives, he never sends the call of God on your life to take you out for negative purposes. Now, other people will say, "Oh, well, you know what? God will never give you more than that you can handle." Oh no, my friend. Oh, that is not true. It is by design that the call of God is too weighty for you. Let me explain. Because if you are like me, and that's, what I find is that a lot of the women who listen to my podcast, who read the blog, who, come around my coaching, they are a lot like me. And I think that's by design too, right? That's the way that God creates us and gives us that heart of service, is to serve those who, we're like, because then we're just a little ways ahead of them, and we can show them where the pitfalls are, we can show them the shortcuts, and we can walk with them when things get hard. And for me, especially, like when I was starting my journey of entrepreneurial, that was something that I was looking for. I felt the weight of the call. I felt the fire of the conviction, but they started to compete with one another. They started to conflict. And I got to tell you something. It took me a little while to learn this, but nothing clarifies like conflict. You need conflict in your world in order for God to be able to clarify some things in your eyes. Tension and pressure are an amazing place to be if you need to make a decision. Because when things feel like they're boat drinks, when things feel like we're on vacay, we're not going to make the decisions. We're just going to kick the can down the road for another day. And so God knows that if He can allow us to step into places where the conflict comes on, where the tension starts to happen, now we've got ourselves a rodeo. Now we've got ourselves a place where we're going to make a decision. And it's going to come down to, how are you going to make that decision? But here's the key. This is the thing that I want you to understand, because for me, in the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, I got taken out a number of times. I quit like 4 or 5 times over the course of 2 years. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I got a church that I'm co-leading with my husband. Why am I doing this too? I've got a women's ministry that I lead. Why am I trying to do a business too? I don't need to do it. My husband is handling, the main finances of our family. Why am I even doing this? Well, can I tell you something? There was conviction. There was a call. And it's the conviction, it's the call that it's the conviction that will keep you going. And that's the part that we as high capacity women feel, is that conviction. And so that feels normal to us, that we want to keep moving forward. That's the conviction. That's the fire that's burning. But here's the thing, the call comes on and there's a weight. And the weight of the call will compete with the fire of the conviction. They are at odds when one thing happens. See, because they're designed to work together. The call of God and the conviction of God on your life, they work together inside of something called the purpose of God for your life. So the purpose of God for your life holds inside of it the call. So He's called you. And then also the conviction, the fire, the anointing for this thing. They work together inside of your purpose. So they should be moving in the same direction, yeah? But there does come a point when a conflict happens. And this happened for me very early on in my journey. And it nearly took me out. It like tried to, and it made me quit a few times, because I was like, I can't, I can't navigate this. There was a tension that was wearing me out. There was a tension that was burning me out. Does anyone? And especially if you've got other plates spinning, you've got other balls in the air, you're just like, I don't need to be doing all of this. And yet that conviction just keeps on driving you, right? It's like Moses going across the wilderness with these people, and he's like, oh, they're so stubborn. I don't need to be doing this, right? He's probably thinking back to the days when he was in the palace with Pharaoh. But it's like the conviction will keep you going. But the call does too, because it brings a responsibility onto your life. But here's the problem. This is where it becomes a problem. Because remember, the call and the conviction are both from God, yeah? So they should not be competing in such a way that they wear you out and tear you down. They should be operating together. But we, as human beings, we can put ourselves in a position where the call and the conviction, they compete, they conflict. And I believe that God lets that happen for a reason, because the conviction is there to be the fire under our butts to keep us moving. It's the wind at our back to keep us going. It's the fire, it's the passion. Okay. But then we've got the call, which is the responsibility. And the call, it keeps you dependent on God. Because here's the deal. If you do what I did in the early days and you take on that call as personal responsibility, and you start to think to yourself, I don't think I got it in the tank. I know I can't do this on my own. I don't think that I'm the right girl for the job. I don't have the resourcing for this. I'm not going to be able to do it. And add in a little sprinkle of, I had 15 other things that were going on at the same time, leading a church, leading a ministry, had small children, was married, trying to like live my life. And now it's like, oh yeah, go do this too. It's like, this is overwhelming. And can I tell you where we lost the plot? Because once I tell you, you're probably going to see it on your own life too. You've probably done this somewhere too. When we allow the call and the weight of the call on our life from God to mean something that's not true, when we allow that weight to become hyper responsibility and start to lie to us, because the enemy will sow tares into the wheat. He will sow lies right into the middle. You've got it. You're right about hearing the call of God for your life. You're right about feeling that conviction. But now the enemy will come in and say, but is that really what God meant? Did God really say? Is he really going to? Is that really how it's going to work? And all of a sudden, we start to question our calling. And that, my friend, is where the lies start to come in and the weight becomes almost unbearable. And we think, well, that's the weight of the calling. No, 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 no. That's the weight of assigning incorrect meaning to your calling. Write that down. When you feel weight like that, and you are tempted to say, oh, well, it's just, the mantle is heavy. It's my cross to bear. Understand something. I understand the absolute like physical, call on a body to do the work. Sometimes it takes long hours or it's hard or you've got to learn something. Okay. But your calling, the weight of your calling isn't supposed to break your purpose. The weight of your calling is not meant to break the fire or put out the fire of conviction. Your calling, that weight is there to keep you dependent on God. Because if you knew the truth about your calling, you would know God is not calling you to do something that you can do in your own strength. You cannot do this business on your own. You might look at other people who are not following God or don't talk about God all the time and thinking like, well, if they can do it, I should surely be able to do it because I have God. Well, listen, it's harder for the believer. It's harder for the one who's following Jesus because we have a higher calling. It's not just to build the business, it's to build the business and expand the kingdom. It's first and foremost to follow Jesus, to preach the gospel, to make him known, to make disciples, right? And in the midst of that, the vehicle for doing that in one way is the business that you're building. But we lose the plot when we try to decide that, oh, it's the calling is too heavy for me. No, friend. If he called you to it, he will get you through it. But you've got to make a decision that you are going to rely on him and you're going to believe him at his word. And so the first skill that I had to develop was to believe 2 Corinthians 10:5 as an absolute marching order and mandate in my business. 2 Corinthians 10:5. It says, take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. That and Paul is not mincing words there. Every thought. So here's the thing. A lot of times I would think that the thoughts that I was having were responsible or, I'm taking that onto myself. So of course I'm being responsible. Oh, I want to do that. So of course I'm being responsible. But here's the thing. If God didn't call you to it and to be responsible to that specific thing, if he didn't tell you, oh, it's your job to figure it all out. And by the way, can I tell you something? The Bible says not one place, figure it out. It says everywhere, all over that book, it says, believe God, obey God, trust God. Like that's what it says. So when we get in that space of like, oh my goodness, this is too heavy. And then we start to think, I've got to figure this out. That is the first place that you should identify. I'm losing the plot. Because the minute you think you have to figure it out on your own, listen, the harvest is the Lord's. I was in Matthew chapter 9 today, and Jesus was talking to the disciples about, you know what? The harvest is ripe. There are so many people out here. He's like, but pray to the Lord that he would send more workers into the harvest. Right? Because it's like it's all out here. And that's the truth. And so when we think about the calling on our life, it's when I was looking at that verse, Jesus was saying, look, ask the Father for the workers so that the workers can reap the harvest. But the harvest itself, it's already ripe because that's God's job. The outcome, the fruit is God's job. He just needs us to go out and reap it. He needs us to go out and pull it in, to bring it in. So if you start to think about, okay, he's called me to this and he's given me a conviction for it. So he's given me both the weight and the fire. So I have the responsibility, but I also have the fire and I can rely on him that the outcome is already done. Now I just have to walk in what he's called me into. And I can allow that conviction to drive me forward. The only way that the enemy can get you off that path is if he can convince you that the weight of that calling means you're going to die, you're going to fail, you're going to be abandoned, you're going to get left behind, you're going to go bankrupt. Do you see? And so it comes down to the meaning of that weight, the meaning of it. And so that's where God grabbed a hold of me one day and he was like, what you think that means is totally wrong. You need to take that thought captive and make it obedient to me. And then Isaiah 61 says he is a God of exchange. He gives beauty for ashes. So it's like, give him the bad thing and ask him for the good thing. So I would just constantly be like, God, I'm handing you my doubt. I'm handing you my worry. I'm handing you this situation. I need help. And then he would open doors and he would open my eyes to revelation of how to solve things and how to go forward with things. And I just had to learn that the main thing in this place, when I started to get taken out by the weight of my calling, I needed to realize I'm not getting taken. God gave me this weight. He gave me this responsibility, but he also gave me the conviction to keep me moving forward. The place where it's breaking is where I'm allowing the enemy to convince me that the weight means that I'm going to die, fall behind, go bankrupt. People are going to leave me. I'm going to be a bad person. And so now I'm trying to get out from under the calling. Sister, no, that is not the answer. The answer is to 2 Corinthians 10:5, your thoughts. I've got a worksheet for this. It's free. If you want to grab a hold of it, it's inside of my Kingdom Builders Mindset Toolkit. It's a download. And so it's called the Thoughts Exchange Worksheet. You can go to ericapile.com/toolkit and download the toolkit. And this is one of the worksheets that's in that toolkit, the Thoughts Exchange Worksheet. And it just walks you through the process of what's the lie or the fear that you're believing. What does God say is the truth in his word? Okay, now let's do the prayer to exchange it and let's practice believing the truth. It's really that simple, but it's so hard. But once you get into the rhythm of doing that, you're unbeatable. You're unbeatable because then you go, okay, well, I'm having a hard day today, but I know I'm going to move forward, but I need to deal with this lie. I need to deal with this fear. And the minute that I can get God's help to deal with this lie or this fear, I can put the calling and the conviction back together again and I can keep on moving. Yeah. And so I learned that early days of my entrepreneurial journey. And, it was good. But can I tell you something? One of the things that I found about that was that I sometimes needed some help with that. It can be very overwhelming. Maybe you're saying that as I'm giving you that as an answer. You might be like, yeah, Erica, it's really easy to say that, but the doing of that is really hard. I have a hard time catching myself believing the lie. I have a hard time helping, like figuring out what the truth is and then actively exchanging that with God and practicing that truth going forward. And I would say to you, amen. That I get it because I was there too. And in the mid years of building my business and struggling, I started to have some pretty big meltdowns about that, if I'm being honest. I did. And the reason for it was I was like, I feel like I'm the only one out here that's trying to do it like this. I could see so many other people in our space that were just following a new strategy or a new pattern that was put out. I saw people just taking courses and implementing other things, and it seemed like they were having quick success. And I was like, okay, but I do that and it doesn't work like that for me. And I started to realize that, there's this combination of it's not that simple, even though it might look like that on Instagram or wherever, your preferred social media. It may look like it's overnight success or like it's as simple as ABC, but it never really is. What I learned is that mindset is a big piece of this. And entrepreneurship is the best personal development program you will ever join. Like it is the best because it makes you have to look at yourself in these really tight situations and really determine how am I going to persevere because you wear all the hats in the beginning. And so it really does challenge you. And even as a Christian, like I know that like prayer is the best way, to get change going in your life and getting into the presence of God and believing God and allowing the word of God to transform your mind. But it's like, what's going to make you do that? Right? Is it the schedule enough? Or when you step into a calling as an entrepreneur, a kingdom entrepreneur, and realizing I can't do this all alone, right? And the conviction is just driving me forward, but I need to make sure that that meaning is on point so that I don't wreck myself. Well, then you start to realize, like, oh, I need to keep a clean mind. I need to worry about my mindset. I need to align my brain with the Bible and be walking like that. So when I see those things out there and I see it working for people a certain way, I realize, like, we don't see everything on social media that we think we can. But then also you hire, I tell my people this all the time: higher rev, higher responsibility. And Jesus said this in different ways to his disciples. He did it, he showed it, he showcased it to them in the way that he talked with his disciples versus how he talked to the crowd. But also, like, you see it in the life of Peter and how he interacted with Peter and how he was like, look, you're going to have to believe and you're going to have to stay consistent at this higher level because there's a higher calling on your life. And so higher rev, higher responsibility actually is a biblical thing. And so if we're going to be out here in these internet streets being kingdom builders, kingdom business people, we are examples. We are ministers. We're ambassadors for Christ out here. And how we run our business is not an exception. And so, you've got to understand that you getting to that level of success and how you do it, there's a heavier weight on you than on those who are doing it any which way the world wants to teach them. And so just for that reason, I would say to you, like, because that was happening for me. I was looking around and I was seeing other people succeeding and I was trying all their strategies and it wasn't working. And it was at that time that the Lord was really talking to me about, like, look, you've got to work this out. You keep on trying to take all this responsibility onto yourself and you really need to rely on me. And then he said this other thing: you also need to rely on other people. And I remember balking at that at first because I was like, I should be able to figure this out on my own. I should, like, you gave me this calling. I've always been good at figuring things out. I'm a process engineer expert. Like, come on. And what he wanted to teach me in those middle years of building my business is, like, you can be really good at what you do, but your mindset, it's going to do better in a community. And so he finally convinced me that I needed to find some people. And so I went on this 18-month journey of praying about finding a mentor and finding a community. Okay. But something that you need to understand, and it took me a little while, is he's never going to ask you to do this entrepreneurial journey on your own. And it doesn't mean that you're not good enough or that you're a failure if you've tried on your own and you haven't been able to do it. And then you ultimately are like, fine, then I'll go find a community. I'll find a coach. I'll find a company of people to become a part of. Actually, that's God's plan. When we go rogue and try to figure things out on our own is when the problems start. Like, just think about King Saul. Think about King Saul. He's called to be king. He's got insufficiency issues to begin with. And Samuel is trying to help him out and tell him, like, look, just do what God tells you to do. And he gives him this plan for, you're going to sacrifice. I'm going to come and do the sacrifice before you go into battle. And he's like, you need to wait for me. Well, Saul waits for him up until hour 11 on the last day and finally gives up. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to have to do it myself. And he does the sacrifice. And as a result of that, he winds up losing the anointing. He loses the call of God on his life because he decided to figure it out on his own. And when Samuel was like, why did you do this? He's like, well, you didn't come and I had to figure it out, right? And it's like this sound that we've probably all made, which is like, well, it didn't feel like anyone was coming for me and I had to figure it out on my own. Someone had to do it. Listen, that's actually the sound of pride. That's false humility. I've been there and I spent a year and a half there. Well, I spent like a year there and then God finally convinced me, like, no, you need people. So then I started trying to find people. And my story goes that I actually identified a few people that I thought could be my mentors. And two of them actually went and asked them point blank, will you mentor me? Can we do this? And both of them turned me down. Now, looking back in retrospect, I know that they were the wrong people for where I was going, and they were not the people that God wanted for me. And one of the reasons that I know this is because after the last, like, this is not happening, I kind of went into a little bit of a spin. And so I was really upset. And there was a day when I broke down completely and I was like in the fetal position on the floor crying. My husband's praying over me and I'm getting all frustrated because I'm like, God, I just need a person. I just need someone who understands. I don't need someone to tell me what to do. I don't need, I'm good. Like I know what to do. I just want to be around other people, other women who are called to build this way, who are working on a pure mindset that's set on you, who is putting you first, who's prioritizing you and your kingdom, that wants to do it sanctified, wants to do it Proverbs 31 style, doesn't want to compromise, but also doesn't want to negotiate on their faith, their family, their sanity, their health. Right? Come on. And they're like, I want to do this. I want to be successful at it. I want to bring glory to God, good to his people, and I want to be able to expand the kingdom. Where are those people? I was freaking out. And in the freak out, I was snotting everywhere. And so I got up, went to my bathroom to blow my nose. And as I'm on the floor blowing my nose, I hear God say to my heart, you build it. I was like, no, you don't understand. I need this. He's like, yeah, you build it. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I don't think that I know what I'm doing. So I need people so that I know what I'm doing. He's like, no, you don't. I told you what to do. I'm telling you what to do. Like they can give you like ideas of like how to piece those things together, but I told you what to do. What you really need is a room filled with women who are sold out for me, who are convicted for the thing that I'm called them to build, and that are going to obey me. And they're looking for a room that they can enter into with other like-minded, like-spirited women who are willing to run at the same pace with the same fire on the inside of them so that I get glory, the people are done good, you feel fulfilled, and it all works. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. He's like, build it. And then he reminded me that Jesus said, give and it will be given to you, right? And the same measure that you use in giving, it will be used to give back to you. And so even though I was still struggling with those doubt thoughts from, the calling, the heavy responsibility, the heavy weight of the call, and like, I can't do that. I'm looking for this. I can't do this for other people. The Lord was like, Erica, you are further along than all the women who are going to come. You don't have to be a million paces in front of them. You just have to be like 2 or 3 steps ahead. You just have to have a little bit that you can sow into them. And that's where the pouring out principle was born in my community. It's like, are you willing to pour out? And we all want to talk about like, well, you can't pour from an empty cup. Well, did you not have a quiet time this morning? Did you not get in the word? Did you not pray? Do you not have the Holy Spirit living on the inside of you? Because not having anything to pour out from, it starts from a personal responsibility place. In 1 Samuel, when I think it's like chapter 30 or somewhere back there, David, all of his people were taken off, stolen, wives, children, stuff stolen while he was off acting a fool with the Philistines. And it says that his mighty men sought to stone him. So David got the memo about don't do it alone, right? But he went a little cuckoo. And so now people are like wanting to kill him. And he finally, it says, David stirred himself up in the Lord. David knew in that moment when it feels like you've got nothing, the first place to get poured into is to go direct, go to God. And immediately when he did that, he got a plan. He rallied the troops. They did not stone him. In fact, they fought with him and they won and they got all their stuff back. So there is this beautiful story woven throughout the Bible of how even these people who are considered heroes in the Bible, they don't do it alone. Gideon had his 300. Gideon was all stressed out that he couldn't have 100,000, 10,000, right? He just needed 300. God knows what you need, but guaranteed, he's not sending anyone out there. Like, even if you're a pioneer, like, think about Jonathan in 1 Samuel 14. He's sitting on the side of the mountain waiting on his father to finally say that they can go and attack the Philistines. They've been sitting there for weeks. And finally, Jonathan's like, looks at his armor bearer and he's like, you want to go with me? Because I reckon we can win by many or by few. You with me? He didn't even go alone. He didn't even go alone. Are we seeing it? So, I think a lot of times we think we put this weight on ourselves that's like, I have to figure it out on my own and I got to do it all on my own. But can I ask you something, sister? Is anyone else in your family an entrepreneur, or are you the first? Of the thing that you're trying to build, is there anybody else in your family that has built it before you or has built anything like that? I work with a lot of women who are in the entrepreneurial space, and most of them are first generation entrepreneurs. And especially if you talk about the niche that they're in, the market that they're serving, they're like, no, this is something that God gave me and that I'm passionate about and I'm doing it. And it's those that really need to have the community around them. And so ultimately what I did was I built a community. It's called the Jesus Girl Gang. We're a whole movement of women. And inside of our community, it's not just about building businesses. I have a mentorship inside of the community. It's called the Build with Faith Mentorship. And I teach you how to build your business online through 5 simple steps: mindset, offer, audience, sales, systems. It's really that simple. It's the same 5 steps that anyone who's teaching how to build a business online is teaching through. But the difference in my community is that we do it with kingdom principles. Mine is the kingdom entrepreneurial mindset. And we weave this priority through everything that we do. So we have like discipleship drops inside of our community. Every Thursday, I go on and I basically preach a message to my girls. And sanctification is really important to us, living a life of service before the Lord, clean hands, pure heart, able to serve God, putting him first, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and then everything will be added to you, right? And so it's like doing this together. It's nobody else is doing my business. I'm not doing anyone else's business. I'm coaching. That's my position. So I coach. But as a community, we encourage one another. We support one another. We help one another stay accountable. We give one another ideas. We inspire one another. And so this community becomes a big part of how we succeed as entrepreneurs, kingdom entrepreneurs online. And I love our community for that. And sometimes I think to myself, I can't believe that I almost missed it because I kept on saying, no, I need to find it somewhere else. I'm so glad that God arrested me in that bathroom and said, no, you build it. Because what I have built with these women over the last, 7 years, I think it's absolutely incredible because it encompasses everything. It encompasses just the mindset and the conviction of who we are as godly women and kingdom entrepreneurs, first and foremost. And then it speaks to the community and not going alone. And then there is the patterns and the frameworks that I teach through in the mentorship so that it makes things simplified so that you don't have to like figure it all out on your own. You need a pattern. We'll talk about that another week, but like Exodus 25, God told Moses, tell the people to build exactly according to this pattern. Well, guess what? A pattern isn't just simply a strategy. A pattern is a strategy, but it also has certain people, it has certain creative abilities, it has certain timeline. There's all kinds of things that come into a pattern. Just like your purpose isn't just your conviction, it isn't just your calling. It's, and it's also your skill sets. There's so many things in your purpose. Well, there's also a lot of things in a pattern. And so we're out here in these internet streets thinking, if I can just know the next hottest strategy, I'll be fine. Well, it's not that simple. Strategy is just a part of the pattern. There's other things in pattern too. And so it's good to get in with a community that has a coach, someone who's learned these things, because listen, I've spent a lot of money and a lot of sweat and tears to learn these things in a kingdom mindset so that I can bring them into the community. And so we'll talk a lot about that here on the podcast because really we're going to be focused on that biblical entrepreneurial mindset around here. Okay. So, don't think that you have to do it alone. And one of the first things that you can do when it's like, okay, well, don't do it alone. I thought I was supposed to do it with God. You are, but he will lead you to people. He will, and it's not, maybe the people that he's leading you to, it's not forever. Maybe the people that he's leading you to is for a season. Maybe you do a year in a mentorship. Maybe you do a little longer. Maybe you do a short-term thing. But there's always going to be a component of community in the things that we're building in the kingdom. Because it's the one, building the kingdom is the one commonality across everybody's purpose in the kingdom. All of our purposes are designed to expand and build God's kingdom and to reintroduce the hearts of the lost to the Father, back to the Father. That's all of our purpose. And then we do it in these different ways. And so coming into community and supporting one another in that endeavor is very powerful. And so, yes, we are meant to go to God and get our calling and our conviction from him directly. But here's what's interesting. Even doing that in community works better. So if you're wondering like, okay, Erica, that's a lot. Where do I start with that? And how do I know? And even you said that you had a hard time finding a community and then God told you to build it. Like that's overwhelming. How do I do this step of breaking past? I don't have to do it alone. Well, number one, I would say do a thoughts exchange worksheet on the lie. If you've believed I have to figure it out all by myself, put that on the worksheet and work that out. And then a next great step, there's another worksheet in that toolkit that I talked about, the Kingdom Builders Kingdom Builders Mindset Toolkit, is the 4 questions prayer template. It's 4 questions that you can ask God from in a prayerful space, and he will show you the steps to get to your next best step. So if you're wondering like, okay, she's saying I should find a community, I should find a place to join, then do the 4 questions with God. And he will run you through, because the first question is, what do you see, God? What do you say about this? And he'll download to you what he sees and says about it. The next question is, what does this mean for me? That's super important, right? Because instead of us deciding what it means, it's like, God, what should this mean for me? Let me position my heart properly. Next question is, what's my role, my responsibility, and my permission in this? That kind of helps you to get positioned for what's next. And then the 4th question is, what's my next best step? So it's a really powerful tool. So I would encourage you, go to ericapile.com/toolkit and download the full toolkit, because the thoughts exchange worksheet and the 4 questions prayer template are both in there. But the practical answer for, well, Erica, you're telling me not to do this alone. This podcast is a really great first step for finding your people. If what I've been talking about today is really resonating with you, you want to hit the subscribe button. You really do. Because this is the entry point to the community that I've built. I've built a community called the Jesus Girl Gang. We are a community of women. We've been traveling together for the last 8 years or so. And inside of that community, I have a mentorship called the Build with Faith Mentorship. When you're ready to build on purpose and on mission, there's a whole on-ramp to getting into that mentorship community. And it starts with something that I call the Jesus Girls Business Launch Lab. We're going to be running another one of those in mid-June. And so just put it in your mind, on your calendar. It's coming. We'll open a wait list soon. I'll probably even give you an early bird rate if you hear about it here on the podcast. So make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're watching or listening, and we'll keep talking about it as we go. But here's the deal, my friend. Number one, right? There's conviction. Your conviction and your calling should work together, and they should never take you out, because they're both from God. Number 2, you don't have to figure this out alone. You don't have to walk it out alone. You don't have to do it alone. You're not proving anything to anybody. And God even said, we do better when we're connected. We do better when we're connected. And lastly, join the community here, because I really believe that that is your next best step as we travel together and figure out what this looks like to be a part of a kingdom builder movement. So a group of women who are, I'll leave it with this. In Luke chapter 8, verses 1-3, it basically says that Jesus, who's traveling to these villages for ministry, he's traveling around with people, and he's got his disciples with him. And it says, and certain women who provided for Jesus's ministry out of their own substance. This Luke 8 lady is the New Testament version of the Proverbs 31 woman. In Proverbs 31, we see a woman who is a godly daughter, a godly wife, a godly mother, a godly sister friend, and a godly entrepreneur. She considers a field, buys it, and she plants it. She takes her extra wares from her household to the market and she sells them. She's an entrepreneur, my friend. And when we come into the New Testament and we see this in Luke chapter 8, verses 1 to 3, we see women who are providing for Jesus out of their own substance. Now, what's funny is that these women, a couple of them, are married to people who actually were not down with Jesus's ministry, but their money was funding their families and their stuff. And here are these women out of their own substance who have said, you know what? I'm going to support Jesus. I'm going to go with Jesus and I'm going to support Jesus, because they were so drawn. They were so convicted and they had an anointing and a calling. And so they were sowing into Jesus's ministry. You and I can do that too, sister. That is what this kingdom business movement is all about. That's what it looks like to be a Jesus girl, part of the Jesus girl gang, and to be a Luke 8 lady, is that we're building businesses in the earth that have both impact and make income. And we're going to expand the kingdom. We're going to make him known. And we're going to make wealth, because Deuteronomy 8 says that he gives us the power to make wealth. And the reason that we want that is because we want to be able to expand his kingdom. We want to make him known in the earth. And we can be good stewards of that finance as we go forward. It's okay to earn obscene amounts of money. Steward it according to what God is telling you to do. And you and I, my friend, we can be the Luke 8 ladies of 2026. What do you say? All right, friend, that's what I have for us this week. I hope you'll go and download the toolkit at ericapile.com/toolkit. Go get your thoughts exchange worksheet and your 4 questions prayer template and get to work. Okay. Get that mindset working and be sure to subscribe. I want to see you here next week. We're going to be here next time. It's good. I record on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern live here on YouTube. And then I pop it over to the podcast platforms, the audio platforms after that. So if you want to join me live, join me on YouTube Thursdays at 3 p.m. I'll see you here again, friend. All right. That's all for now. I'll see you soon.